the screen.
Oh,
Can you see
you
the
do?
screen?
Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know I was already sharing.
You're
Oh,
just very
okay.
prepared, Noel. And speaking of which, Noel, just want to welcome you as our president for Hawaii EV, along with Nanette, our treasurer for Hawaii EV, and they'll be speaking to us about what's green and truly scary for our planet. And then we can have some talk story session about some solutions and whatever else might be coming about. So, without further ado, I'd like to pass it to you, Noel.
Great, great. So, are you still seeing the screen? You are. Okay, great. Well, before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge Jennifer Liu, who just essentially joined Hawaii EV's board. She's been instrumental in a lot of the work we've been doing recently with regard to increasing our marketing presence, our presence on social media, and as a result of that, I think we have quite a few more um, followers and people are participating in our stories and our mission. So, Jen, welcome to Hawaii EV, and glad that you're here with us today. And all of you, thanks for joining. I'd like to spend a few moments, since we're talking about what's truly scary for our planet, just talking briefly about climate. So just a couple of slides here, and as we all know, the crisis is upon us. We're seeing heat records globally being exceeded year after year, right? And in fact, this past summer was no exception. If you scan the news reports across the globe, you'll see, stories about incredible heat threats, associated fires, droughts, etc. But not only that, also stronger storms, rain bombs, and all these different consequences associated with the climate crisis. And we all know, hopefully we do all know, that a great contributor to this is CO2, one of the more dominant greenhouse gases that we're dealing with in our environment. So here you see, this is from NOAA, you see the correlation between atmospheric CO2 and also the average temps globally. And as you can see here, this is starting right around when we started burning coal, and how that's increased over decades, over the century and decades, and how that's contributing or is being correlated with warmer than average temperatures. So we know that we need to do something about CO2. This slide here demonstrates the role that CO2 is playing in global warming emissions. It's not the only global warming gas. In fact, there are others that are more powerful and potent. However, volume-wise, we know that CO2 is dominant. And we also know that a big contributor to emissions is transportation, essentially the combustion of fossil fuel in our vehicles. We see that also in other sectors, electricity generation, and all these other sectors that you see on here. So it's not the only thing, but it's a significant contributor. Here in Hawaii, it's about 40% of our emissions. And importantly, there are things that we can do to mitigate emissions, right? There are solutions that we have before us that everybody can adopt to do our part to reduce our carbon footprint and help to improve the environment. So with that, I would like to turn this over to Nanette so we can talk more about EVs and emissions.
Thanks, Noel. Next slide, please. So we're just going to talk about the emissions of an EV versus a gas car. And when you look at the stats, it's pretty as far as CO2 emissions, it's significant as far as what comes out of a gas car versus an EV. So this is just some numbers summarized from US EPA, and basically for a gas or ICE car, lifetime CO2 emissions is 410 grams per mile for an ICE car, and then you see the EV, and it's 110 grams of CO2 per mile. And if you go to the next slide, and so actually, let's go to the slide after this, and we'll come back to this one, Noel. So as far as the emissions from an electric car, one of the opponents of EVs always say, well, sure, you save on emissions are lower, but what about when you produce the vehicle? There's emissions from actually manufacturing the vehicle, and then in addition to when you operate the vehicle, when you drive the vehicles, there may be some emissions as well. And then there's also upstream emissions, which is basically, yes, your car is charged by battery, but how do you fuel that battery? You've got to use electricity, and there's emissions from that as well. So if you just go back to the first one real quick, Noel.
This one?
No, that one. The next one.
Sorry.
So yeah, that's okay. So this is an interesting graphic, and it's kind of a 3-part graphic, and it just shows, the the emissions from CO2 emissions for a BEV, a hybrid, and then an ICE car. And for BEV, there is more CO2 emitted, and this is not including any renewable energy for manufacturing, but there's an additional CO2 for the battery manufacturing, in addition to the vehicle manufacturing. So on the front end, there could be more emissions than a hybrid or even an ICE car. Next. Yeah, and so this is the operational part of it. So the tailpipe emissions, and then when you maintain the car, and then when you're operating the car, these are potential emissions. Okay, next.
Nanette, can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah. Sure.
The red circles here.
Mm-hmm.
Does that, for the hybrid and the internal combustion engine, does that include the electricity it takes to actually refine the gasoline?
I'm not sure on that as far as the what they account for in the as far as the production and the fueling part of it. I'd have to take a look at that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And also the first bubble there for fuel energy production, that's generalization, right? I think depending on location, how clean the grid is, how the user fuels their EVs, whether or not they have solar, that could also, so it's a generalization. But I think the important thing is that there's heavy momentum towards decarbonizing electricity production, and this only improves over time.
Yeah, I imagine that 26 has a lot of variability.
Yeah.
Okay, and then finally there is this is the total. So you can see over time, through the end of life of the vehicles, the EV, the battery EV emits after in the total lifetime emits the least amount of CO2 versus the hybrid and the ICE car, the gas car. So if we go back to this slide here, so knowing that people always say, well, you have to account for the CO2, the emissions that you have. Gas emissions when you produce an EV, it's not exactly zero emissions. So this study, and this is actually from Recurrent, shows that after about 2 years, it kind of catches up to, it recovers, I guess, that additional manufacturing CO2 from producing an EV, because it is again there's more emissions producing that EV, not including the renewable energy.
Yeah, I think also, and by the way, as we go through this, I think we're inviting conversation. So we want this to be an informal type of event. But I think it's worth noting that, again, what I mentioned earlier, that there is heavy momentum towards decarbonizing our energy systems, right? So here in Hawaii, there's a big pressure, and it's state law, the RPS, that mandates our transition. But even without that, there's a lot of momentum associated with all the federal incentives. Some of these microgrids that can be installed, you can have 50% of the cost covered by incentives, as an example, and it's cheaper, right? So we're seeing that more and more. It's renewable energy is cheaper than relying on fossil-based renewable energy production, which is also subject to a lot of volatility, which is what we saw with the Ukraine crisis, and we're going to see more of as a result of instability in the Middle East. So this thing just improves, right? It's one of those things. You buy an electric vehicle, you use it, and over time it actually increases in its effectiveness in reducing emissions because the grid continues to get cleaner.
Yeah, and on this chart, you can see those bottom three lines is the difference between, the EV with your cleanest electricity, which is probably, powering it via solar on your rooftop. And then the pink line is the natural, an average. And then the purple line is the dirtiest electricity. So there's no renewable energy at all, no clean energy at all to power the EV. So, I mean, it's still significantly lower than a nice car, of course.
Before I
go ahead.
You're gonna hand it off to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna hand it off to you.
Before I do that, though, I'd like to just comment on this thing here. So, and Tam, this is probably going to be, your baby in a future discussion. So, electric vehicles include, you have the battery electric vehicle, you have a variation of that, which is the plug-in hybrid, and then you also have the fuel cell electric vehicle, right? The hydrogen cars like the Mirai, and there's a lot of attention on hydrogen today, which is warranted. I think at some point it's going to play a very important role in decarbonizing the economy, but only if it is one created properly, right, through electrolyzed hydrogen using clean energy, and it's used for the right things. And light duty transportation especially doesn't make sense. So if you take a look at you take a look at this life cycle emissions and you add another column here for fuel cell electric vehicles, especially light duty, you'll see a similar pattern where it doesn't quite make sense for a number of reasons. And we'll probably have that be a conversation topic for another talk story. Anyway, I just wanted to call that out. There's a missing column in this diagram. So I'd like to shift gears and have us talk about efficiency. And there's that saying, "Waste not, want not." If we focus on efficiency, and that is the effective utilization of energy, so that you use less of it to do the desired amount of work that you need done, then what you'll see is less energy utilization, better pocketbook impact, right? You're going to use less money for energy. It doesn't matter if it's gasoline or electricity, and as a result, it's better for the environment, right? You're not having to utilize electricity when it's not necessary. So the question is, so what do we do, and what role does an EV play in that regard? And you'll see variations of this, and I know we're all EV supporters here, but this is a very effective way to communicate to somebody who doesn't quite understand the efficiency benefits associated with an electric vehicle. We all know about less complexity in terms of the drivetrain. We know about the fact that a lot of the energy is actually wasted as heat in a gas car, and that in an electric vehicle, most of the energy that's stored in the battery is actually utilized for the primary use of that energy, which is propulsion. So it's almost like 80 or even more percentage of the energy stored is actually leveraged on an electric vehicle, and with a gas car, 50% or more of the energy that you put in the gas tank is actually wasted. And people can relate to that when you convey to them the fact that for every dollar you put in your tank, you're probably throwing away 50 cents or more of that dollar, right? So you translate that into money. If the more efficient your vehicle, the more money you'll save to be able to get the task done. And by the way, just feel free to jump in if you have any additions to that. So one of the things that is really important, I think, for buyers of EVs is to take a look at, among other things, and we'll talk about the among other things shortly, but efficiency, like how efficient is that vehicle in terms of its ability to leverage the energy that is stored in the battery. So we're now talking about EVs here, not put gas aside. And I pulled this from, I think it was cars.com. I haven't had a chance to validate the amount of energy per 100 miles, But you can see what's interesting is that, number one, the Ioniq 6 and the Lucid, they're large sedans, right? But they're up there as far as efficiency is concerned. Tesla Model 3, what's really weird here is, so it's going up. So Tesla Model 3 rear-wheel drive, you have 25 kilowatt hours per 100 miles, and so on, right? So the point is that as we're shopping for an electric vehicle, one of the things we might want to do is take a look at how efficient that vehicle is in transforming energy into, propulsion. And there's a way to measure that. So a lot of this information is available over the internet, and it's something that we don't always look into, but especially if you're cost conscious with regard to energy, this is something that would be important to investigate. Right sizing. This is something that bugs me. And although I sometimes feel like a hypocrite because my two EVs are large EVs, right? My first EV was a Nissan Leaf, 2011, and that was just the right size for like just general stuff. But when our son was born, it was too small. It was not safe enough. And the only safe vehicle at that point in time, back in 2014, that was available was the Tesla Model S. So we got a Tesla Model S. And then in 2016, because of our real estate business and we needed a truck, we opted to utilize a Tesla Model X. So when you look at those vehicles, they're large vehicles. However, the question isn't necessarily whether or not it's, you need to get a large or small vehicle. The question is whether or not it is fit for purpose. So if you're all you're doing is, in-town commutes and you're doing grocery shopping, et cetera, you're not, loading stuff up for major projects, a sedan might do it. A small sedan might do it, right? So the point is that it's important to right size the purchase, and if you do that, you'll maximize your savings, right? Because number one, you'll buy a more affordable vehicle. It'll have a smaller battery. You won't have all that weight to carry around. It's going to be more efficient, very likely, and it will have a smaller impact on the environment because, again, it's going to have a smaller footprint in terms of production and operation. So, I tried to find the least efficient EV, and it turned out to be maybe the Hummer EV. And you see from the New York Times here, it's like it uses the same amount of lithium per rider as 3 smaller batteries, 3 smaller cars, 240 electric bike batteries, and also half as much lithium as a battery needed to power an electric bus. We have someone joining in the waiting room there. Yeah, so hopefully that resonates with you, right? It's very possible, just like with the gas car today, it's very possible that you'll overspend if you're not conscious about what you need the vehicle for and whether or not it's the right vehicle for that purpose. So that's the other thing about efficiency. The bigger the vehicle, the least it's going to be not as efficient, and you're going to spend more, and it may not be required. The next thing I'd like to share is just about driving wisely, right? So one of the things that's really interesting is that, and it doesn't matter if you're driving an electric vehicle or a gas car. If you have a lot of junk in your trunk, you could have 50 pounds of stuff in there. It's actually going to impact your overall efficiency, right? It's unnecessary weight. So I tried looking for a junk in your trunk image online, and this is what I came up with. Obviously, this is the extreme, but you get the point, right? If you have a vehicle and you've got a lot of stuff in the trunk or in the vehicle that you don't need, all that weight is unnecessary load for your propulsion system. So you're going to be using and wasting energy. And there are other things too that we can consider. Planning your trips, sharing your ride, driving smoothly, right? So not I know this is kind of challenging with electric vehicles, but taking off, gradually, anticipating stops, maximizing regen, that sort of thing. All those things can contribute to savings in terms of energy and then also pocketbook. I have one more slide, and then we'll go into a talk story here. So the last thing I'd like to share is related to not necessarily cars, but alternatives to a passenger car. And Hawaii EV is obviously focused on the electrification of transportation, but we're also cognizant of the fact that, you can't solve this issue if all you're trying to do is shift, gas car to electric car. There are many other opportunities to save on, on energy, on, pocketbook, cash, and then also the environment. And one way to do that is to reduce the need for a passenger car. And it's not to say we don't need a car. If you don't need a car, or if you need a car, get a car, but get the right one. But if you don't need one, and there are opportunities for you to leverage other strategies like mass transit, bicycling, easier now with e-bikes, and other forms, it'll actually help us with our mission to migrate to a more sustainable energy future. And I know this is a little difficult, especially in situations like Big Island, where you have rural areas. The distance between communities and jobs and shopping and medical is such that it's not always feasible. But we can also strive for sustainable communities, right? If we're building new communities, we take into account. Can the developers take into account, real estate? Commercial spaces, proximity to services, so that people that live there are not going to have to always commute to get some of the basic things. And with that, I think we can go into just a conversation. So I'm going to see how I can stop sharing here. We need to stop sharing. Sorry. So any comments or questions?
I have a comment. In your slide where you show vehicle efficiency, one thing that I've learned since getting a smart charger is that the chargers, if I want to put up to 80% power into my car, I lose 10% of the power in the charging process. Like if I want to put 80 kilowatts, it's going to take me 88 kilowatts of power to get 80 into the battery. And I rarely have seen any comment about that. But my charger tracks the kilowatts that are actually used. And from 80% to 100%, the efficiency does drop down to 80. You lose 20% of the power getting that battery up to 100%.
Do you know what that's interesting, because we don't, we don't pay attention to those details, right? Not like you. But is it a function of the charging speed? Like
I haven't like clocked it at different charging speeds. I don't know. My charger's a 40 amp charger, and I think it goes pretty close to that.
Yeah.
Possibly, charging at lower rates, it might be more efficient. I don't know, but using a level 2 at its capacity, that's what I found. It was 88. It was 90% efficient all the way up to 80% of battery charge, and then it was 80% efficient for the last 20%.
Interesting. Jim, do you have any insight into that?
Not being an engineer, I have to confess that I don't. One thing I will say as a side note is when I'm talking to the manufacturers we work with, especially on the software side, I keep encouraging them to put in a pricing scheme that will allow for different pricing public charging stations at 80%. And pretty much all the manufacturers we've talked to is, oh, that's really interesting. We never thought about that. It's like, we want to encourage people to charge at 80 and then get out and let somebody else plug in. So hopefully some of them are starting to listen, and we'll see that feature in the pricing capabilities before too long.
That's interesting too, because so I rarely use public charging, but my understanding is, reading through some of the posts. So, and Nanette, you probably have insight on this, right? With the superchargers, that after 80, it starts to taper down speed-wise, right? Is that the true statement?
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
so you optimize your time at the station, reaching 80%. And if you're going to try to top off to 100, you're going to spend a lot of time there because it starts to taper off time, energy-wise. I'm also wondering.
Yeah, I don't know if the Hiko fast chargers do the same, or there's a EA Electrify America ones.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I assume they are, but
yeah, I think it may also be a function of the vehicle, right? In terms of wanting to protect the battery, is to start slowing it down. But the other thing too about I noticed that I rarely go to 40 amps. I usually have it set to 15, or just around that point, because I don't really need to charge fast. When I get home, I mean that's really slow, but like overnight charging. And I noticed that whenever I bump it up to close to 40, it probably heats up the battery, because now you get the AC system running, so it's like it's rougher on the battery as a result, and you have cooling, right, that happens as a result of that. I don't know if that has an impact on the efficiency, but I guess maybe we can probe into that. And
Are you saying that it's better for normal people that are charging to like charge up to 80 and then go to be more energy efficient and like turn off the AC? Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure.
I think a lot of the EV manufacturers say, for just daily stuff, daily driving, just get it to 80%. The only time you go over 80% is if you're going to have a long trip, right? And like for us, it would be going to Kona for a Costco trip, and we would bump it up to 90% or 95%, but that's rare. Most every day, it would just be to 80%, and that would be good for the battery. It's almost like the sweet spot for the battery is like between, I don't know, 30 and Lauren, is that right? About 30% to 80%?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't want it to go too low, but you also don't want to go too high. And if you do go high, don't leave it at that state of charge for a long time. Like charge it to 90% because you're going to go on a trip, and then use it right away. So you're not having it linger, especially at 100%. I don't know why people would do that, but some do. But don't charge it 100% and leave it there. Once it's at 100%, take off. Start using the vehicle.
I think it's important to have the caveat that that's the traditional lithium-ion chemistry, but some of the other chemistries, like the base model, Model 3, that battery actually is happy to go to 100%.
Oh, that's interesting.
One of the fun things about this industry is that for every rule, there's some caveat.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So the LFP, I think, batteries. Yeah, I mean, they recommend, right, go up to 100. So I think you're going to see that change, right? As technology, battery technology changes, and it'd be interesting, especially like well, I know, when the range is up to 500 miles. Like I know, like the Ioniq 6 already has like a 500-mile range. For me, it's when I had my 2017 Model X, I would charge it to like I think my 80% was like I can't remember, 190 or something like that. And then now with my new Model X, like my 80% is like 270 or 280. But I panic when it goes below 150 miles. Whereas before, like a year ago, I'd be like, I got 150 miles of range, but it's kind of in my mind, it's like, oh my gosh, I already drove this many miles. So it's still in my mind, I drove this many miles, even though my range can go farther and I probably charge less. So I don't know how people like with and I'll have to ask one of our members has just got Ioniq 6, so it's like 500-mile range. If her habits have changed, or now does she charge at 350 miles now, or
yeah. So for those of us who drive EVs, and Pono, welcome, by the way, and Pono is a colleague of mine with Sustainability Partners. So Pono will eventually get an EV, I predict.
Yes, hopefully. All for having me.
So
that's why I'm trying to learn as much as I can from the EV community.
Yeah.
So I can make an educated purchase,
Yes.
You buy an old car. That's what you do.
So,
Sorry, I missed that, Jim.
You just buy Noel's old car.
yeah, Pono, I'm
Yes.
yes. So we don't set our cars, we don't set it to miles. So we display percentage. It's all we've ever done. And the reason for that is the whole miles thing is so unpredictable, right? Depending on your style of driving, depending if you're going uphill or downhill, it kind of recalculates, right? But so we just do percentage. I'm just curious. So, Nanette, it looks like you do miles. Does anyone?
I think because I've been used to doing miles, and because in the beginning it was just miles. You weren't able to look at it from percentage. Now you can do it either way, right, on the Tesla app.
Yeah.
And I'm an analyst, right? So I want to know exactly how many miles I'm going to get, right, versus the percentage. I mean, I guess I could switch my focus, but that's how I watch. That's how I kind of look at it.
Yeah.
That makes sense, Nanette. Pono, I just want to let you know, I just joined the EV train. I had a 98 Honda Civic that I love so much, but had to decline it and give it up. And I got an EV and it's like life changing. I'm like in love with my car, never been before. The charging thing is kind of like a fun scavenger hunt, which charger is working. Jim, all of yours are working. You're good. I think it's just probably where I'm going is like not also
Like your attitude, Jen.
the most awesomest, but
We work hard.
I got
Glad to hear that it's paying off.
yeah, and actually, to be completely honest, yeah, the ones I go to that are charge point there, you guys, all awesome. There's some other ones I go to that don't work, but that's okay. It's like a nice challenge. But I would say the biggest thing for me is learning that the car that I have, I got a new Mini Cooper, and when you press the brake, when you release, they do this like regenerative charging thing. So when I first started driving, I felt like I was like really heavy footed because it would just like kind of jolt you back. So that's the one thing I've been having to like learn.
Jennifer, what island do you live on?
I live on Oahu.
Yeah, our experience with chargers over here on the Big Island is not so great. And I have a 300-mile range car, and for me to go to Hawaii and back, it's almost 300 miles. And and if I'm doing any sort of errands, I have to get it charged somewhere. And the state of charge of our chargers is such that I never get to a charger where I don't have enough power to either go forward to the next charger or backwards to the previous one, because often they're broken or there's someone asleep and they've got their cable in the charger and the car's full. It's not even charging. And so they're about to remedy that and put in some double chargers. I was hoping we were going to get 4 cords per charger, but what I just read this morning was some of our chargers are going to get upgraded to 2. And
yeah, I can comment on that, and Tim, I'll acknowledge your question as well. So I did send out a newsletter, a newsflash. And Hawaiian Electric, for their territories, they are upgrading their devices, right? They have FSEC machines, which are very unreliable. They're difficult to repair. Parts are scarce, and they've decided to move forward with tritiums. And so what they're going to do is they're going to replace their existing DC fast chargers with tritiums. 50K, is it 50 kW? Is that the right unit of report?
Some 50, some 75.
And then for some sites, they're actually going to add a new one. So it's going to be a doubling up in some locations, like Hilo and also Kona will have two stations. But what you're referring to as far as the 4 ports, I think that was. Are you referring to NEVI? Are you referring to the NEVI chargers?
The ones that the money from the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah. So there's federal funding for NEVI, National Electric Vehicle something initiative. Anyway, so Hawaii is getting several of those. Hawaii Island is getting 5 of those hubs, and each hub is supposed to be able to support 450 kW charging events at a time, so 600 kW. And so the state is actually deploying Tritium chargers, and each charger will be able to support 150 kW charging in each hub. So each hub will have 4 of those units, and Hawaii Island's getting 5 of those hubs. So that's different from HECO's plans to replace and upgrade their devices.
Is there timing on that?
The which one?
The NEVI.
So if you ask Ed Sniffen, he's going to say we're going to be the first in the nation, and they're scrambling to get Oahu and Maui. But the target is within the next 2 years. So there's all dependency on permitting, and also the working with HECO and KAUC, because we're also getting one over in Kauai. But yeah, I think the state is wanting to be aggressive about this. They're trying to get it done within a couple of years, starting the end of this year for at least one, and very likely that's going to be at Oahu. Tam.
It's definitely going to make a huge difference. I've met a few people, just a few, at the charging stations where they live in an apartment, they have no home charger, and they are spending hours charging, and it's their only option. So yeah, when there's going to be 4 cores and the machines will be reliable and 150 kW, it's going to make a huge difference.
Yes, I agree. And Jim, I think we're working with your team to procure those, right?
Indeed, it's something I work on a little bit every single day.
Right on.
Thank you. Tam?
I think I should comment. One of the other barriers that we see is not necessarily the chargers themselves, but the supporting infrastructure. Trying to get a transformer today is like moving heaven and earth. If I were to get into a new business 10 years ago with what I know now, I would open Jim's transformer shop. That we're talking about 1 to 2 year backlog on some cases.
Yeah, that's crazy. Tim?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of echo Lauren's comments that, as most people on the call know, Big Island has major issues with EV charger reliability, and we are working on this on various fronts. As Noel mentioned, it's definitely not as fast as I would like, and it's very frustrating when I do drive around the island to encounter, frequent down EV chargers, particularly the ones run by HECO, which you would think would be reliably up, but they're not. They just don't work anymore. In most cases, I've tried them. Apparently, they're looking to upgrade them, like Noel mentioned, and they're just not doing anything to fix the existing ones till they get the new ones, which to me makes no sense at all. But it is what it is. But I do want to also reiterate my feeling that we should push very hard, if we need to, in each case, for upgrades to include 4 chargers, not just 2, if that's the case, no matter who's installing them, because we need to future-proof those locations. 2 is great for the next couple of years, but I'm anticipating within the next 5 years, it'll be back to the same situation where they're either down or they're occupied. We need at least 4 at each location for sure.
Yeah. No.
Is anyone from HECO on the call?
No.
Okay, then I can talk a little bit more for good.
By the way, we're recording.
It probably, if you dug enough, you'd be able to find this. But part of the challenge with the FSEC units is that FSEC actually went bankrupt. So they were in receivership for, as they say in Europe, because they're Portuguese, for a good 2 years or so. And it was just impossible to get anything out of them from a parts perspective. They got down to maybe 2 people in America that was trying to do everything. And they recently did get bought. Theoretically, things are going to get better. But in the meantime, HECO did decide that they were tired of waiting, as I think everybody was. And so hence the switch over to Tritium, which is a much more robust company.
Thanks. I had not realized that. I thought it was just difficulty on getting parts, and there was a supply type of issue, right? But what you're saying is that the company just isn't there.
Yeah. And
the past
so
2 years.
What HECO is trying to do is take some out, scavenge the parts they can to keep the ones that are still ticking alive as long as they can, to try and buy some time, because it does take time to make this change. I was talking to one of the HECO guys. He said, we want to do a swap out, and we want to take a concrete piece and go from here to here, and all of a sudden that triggers a new permit, and that starts another delay. So I can defend the HECO folks to a certain degree. They are working as hard as they can. There are some very tough structural issues that they're dealing with to try and get this all fixed. Not that they don't want to, but because they're pulling their hair out too.
Thanks, Jim. Hey, Rob, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I was in another meeting.
Oh, no worries. Welcome. Yeah, this is our, shall I say, inaugural talk story. We're restarting this series. So our discussion today is about emissions. It's about efficiency. We talked about different strategies we can employ, right-sizing purchases. And by the way, even some of these topics are even relevant to an individual who has to buy a gas car for whatever reason, right? So all these issues are, they apply. So there are inefficient gas cars. There are efficient ones. There are gas cars that have high MPG and those that are guzzlers. Ultimately, we recommend an EV, and there's almost one for every use case and need. But certain situations may warrant someone sticking with the gas car. Anyway, any other points or topics or questions anyone might have?
On reliability, one thing I do want to mention is the federal government, the Department of Transportation, has a funding opportunity out that states can apply for to actually repair dead stations. And so I know that HDOT and I think Ulupono is working on it together. So hopefully that the state of Hawaii will get a slice of that funding. And if I can do a shameless plug, we do have a trade-in program going right now for dead stations. So if you find a dead station, let us know, and we'll go after that and see if we can make a good deal to trade it in. So not only is there a trade-in promotion on the buy side, but there's also the incentive from Hawaii Energy that makes it really easy to do. Yeah,
almost a no-brainer, right? It's like, the money's there, all the incentives are there, and you can make your customers happy. By the way, this is a while back. Wasn't there like an arrangement with Home Depot corporate? Is there any status on that? I think they were going to replace their level 2 chargers or upgrade their level 2 chargers.
It is a long process. Part of the challenge is Home Depot, the staff in Georgia, nobody wants to say, "Hey, this is my project." So they're kind of passing it around from project manager. But it is not stopped, but it is slow.
Right. Okay.
We do have one project that I think will be interesting. Is upcountry Maui. There's an old Jump Smart Maui location, and the owner has decided they want to put a new DC fast charger there. So hopefully that'll progress here before too long.
Oh, that's great news. There are quite a few of those, right, Rob? Jump starts on Maui,
which are not working anymore. Yeah, I actually reported that one to the planning department last year, and they sent a notice to the owners. I guess the owners deciding to upgrade rather than just replace. That's good. It's a very, very busy site, especially on Saturdays. So it's good that they're upgrading that.
Yep. I can tell you that we have approached every single site that has had an old Jump Smart Maui location. So it's not for a lack of information on their part. It's a lack of willingness to make the upgrade themselves. So, and that's part of the challenge we see is that the site hosts are dragging their feet in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Well, so we reported them all last year, and the planning department decided to give them 1 year to comply. And actually, it is right about 1 year right now. So, I had asked them to give them a shorter time because it doesn't take a year to install a charger. But we should be able to reopen those tickets now, I think, and say that they have not complied.
Well, Rob, thanks for your leadership there and bring attention to those issues. We, as you know, here in Hawaii Island, there was a law passed, I think it's a couple of years now, which also covers, the requirement for maintaining, an installed charging station, in addition to installing charging stations in large parking lots. So, but I think Tam looked into it. I don't think there have been any reports from the public about non-functioning charging stations. So we have a law out there. We have a process for reporting, but no one's reporting. So I think, I think we should take your example and utilize that across the state. Thank you.
Can we report the stations at the Hawaii County building?
Those are going to be replaced. There's an active project for that, both over at Aupuni and Kilauea, as well as over at the West Hawaii Civic. So anyway, I think we should be wrapping up here. So Jen, I'd love to turn this back over to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody's participation and just really getting to know different thoughts, different views. And, one of the things we mentioned earlier is that we want to continue this kind of talk story session, get people engaged. So our next talk story session is going to be Thursday, November 16th at noon. So we would love for you guys to join in. We're going to talk about new EV models. Would be curious to know what's on your mind? What are things that you're looking at? I know that Rivian's coming to Hawaii soon, and Nanette's kind of got the pulse on that. So we're going to kind of show some of the new models, give some reviews, and share out. So would love for you guys to join again. Also, if you have any kind of questions or anything, you can always email us. And we'd love for you guys to follow us on social media for all things that are new. So we'll put out the Zoom link, and we'll be posting out promotional things right after this one. So
that was November 16th?
November 16th at noon. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And then if we don't have anything else, would like to, again, thank you for your time. And Noel, do you have any last words, thoughts?
No, I really enjoy this. I kind of miss these talk stories, and, we'll get the word out, so we'll have more people joining us. But just having it on a regular basis, I think it'll give us, allow us to take a pulse of what's important, what people are concerned about, and then importantly, be able to act on those things. So really appreciate everybody's time today and helping us figure out how to make this better moving forward.
Yeah, thanks. This was fun.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Have a good
Bye.
one.
Bye.
Aloha.